Welcome back to the channel, guys. So on today's channel of How To and Steve's How To channel, we're going to address when somebody paints a carbon fiber part and how to fix it. So I guess we'll just jump right into it and you guys can kind of get a feel for what we're doing here. Please don't paint carbon fiber parts. They look good without paint, especially when the paint doesn't match in color or anything. Let's take a look at this. So you can see here, shoddy prep work up there as well. The hood gapping doesn't line up at all on both sides. And the color is way off, not even close. Actually, the camera doesn't even show how bad it is. So the first thing we're gonna do, we'll get those nozzles off there. I did try and take these off yesterday and they're all gonna break. So I think I'll just leave them. We'll mask around it for now. We'll take them off after and we'll get cruising. Okay, now that you have these off and you would generally take these out, I'm not worried about them breaking, that's fine, but I am worried about them breaking. So I'm gonna leave them and I put a little acetone on there to clean up any grease or wax that would be on there and we'll get that cleaned up. Next step is we're gonna put some painter's plastic to protect the fenders and the front bumper all the way around it. And then we'll start the paint stripper. Today we are using aircraft paint stripper. You can use probably any paint stripper. I just have a lot of experience using this particular paint stripper. A couple things to keep in mind. When applying this, it is paint stripper. It will strip paint off of every panel that it touches. So I cannot stress the importance enough of either covering areas you're not working on or just removing your panel completely. Another thing, you don't want too much, but you don't want too little. And what I mean by that is you don't want big blobs. You want a nice even spread, but you don't want it too thin or it's not going to do anything. Temperature, room temperature, you don't want it in direct sun or it just dries before it does anything. So with that said, I think we're gonna get cruising here. Okay, so that's coming along nicely. You can see it peeling off. So there's primer underneath there. So a couple of things are happening right now. Number one, I can't stress the importance enough of latex gloves or leather gloves or whatever gloves you want to wear. The problem with latex is when it touches the paint stripper, it does melt. So there's that. So whenever they prep this hood, they would have scuffed or sanded the gel coat / clear coat that's underneath, applied the primer, and then applied the white paint. So what we're going to run into is we're going to scrape it off in a minute here and then we'll apply another coat. We're going to have to apply multiple coats to this before we get down to kind of where we want to be. So I'm going to scrape this off right away here. We'll see where we are. It's been about 5 minutes. Okay, now while we're waiting a few minutes to give it another scrape, and the reason we wait in between is just to kind of let things free up a little bit. The key is you do want to scrape it. You don't want to wait too long. A couple reasons. Number one, the stripper does start to dry up. And number two is you want to get rid of all the loose debris and stuff so that the stripper can continually work its way underneath things. Let's talk about a scraper for a second. So you'll probably notice that a couple things. Number one, I didn't put it in a plastic bag, and that's because it'll just eat the plastic bag. This painter's plastic actually works pretty good. It'll warp it a little bit, but it doesn't eat through it like it has on my glove here. Number two, you want a sharp scraper, and you want to use plastic. If you use metal, you're going to gouge into it. You just want a sharp plastic one. This is just a wall plastic scraper from Home Depot. It's about 50 cents. And then that way when you scrape it, it peels everything off real nice. So I think we're going to give this another scrape before we give it another layer of stripper. And then that should be close to the final layer. You'll see as we go, there is little areas here and there that essentially are still stuck on there. Like this center area here, this seems to be like it's on there really good. So we'll give that a few minutes there yet, and then we'll work away at that area. Okay, so as things get cruising along here, we start to see areas where I believe some of these areas are going to be body filler that somebody has put on the carbon fiber. Perhaps it was in a collision at some point. Perhaps, I don't know the scenario. May not be body filler. We're gonna find out shortly here once this finishes doing what it's doing, and then we'll see what we're up against. I mentioned you're always gonna have those stubborn spots where some of the paint just sticks better than other areas. Like this, I just scraped that and it did not move at all. So we're just gonna keep working at it, keep applying the paint stripper, and it will eventually win and peel things off. But until then, there's not much you can do. I know what some of you are thinking. I did say I was gonna mask these off, but then I was curious because they were painted, what was under there. And of course, it's the cheap, gross, ugly Chinese hood pins. So I might end up painting them, possibly dipping them black. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. So right now the main focus is this hood and seeing what we're actually working with under the hood. Okay, so we're gonna need one more coat, and I kind of thought that would happen. As I started to see things, I started to notice, like this is where there was a lot of that primer built up, and it's oxidized gel coat or clear coat, however this hood originally was finished. I suspect there's some here too. We got some body filler here, big gouges of body filler everywhere. And that's okay. We can fix this. We can still salvage this, but we need to get the rest of the paint off first, and then we're gonna give it a sand. Okay, I think that's as good as it's gonna get today. Usually you can get a lot more off than that, but this stuff is, maybe it's been on there a long time. I'm not sure, but I do know I don't wanna risk jeopardizing, or I don't wanna risk doing any damage to the carbon fiber, leaving this on there for too long. In some spots, we've actually already gone through the gel coat a little bit, or clear coat. I'd imagine it's a gel coat on here, maybe an epoxy or something. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna scrape off as much as we can. This hood's actually in a lot rougher shape than I expected, but that's okay. And it's a little bit of a challenge then. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scrape off as much as I can here. And then I'm gonna use some soapy water and I'm gonna clean off what's left. And then we're gonna use our orbital sander, and we're going to do the whole hood in a 400 grit. And we're gonna spend some time taking down all these paint spots that we have on here, and we're gonna hope that we don't burn through to the actual carbon fiber underneath. So with that said, let's do this. Okay, so I got it washed and dry. If you have a pressure washer, definitely the way to go. Unfortunately, it's like minus 20 Celsius for me outside right now, so that's not really an option. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's cold. So next up, we're gonna give it a sand. At the same time, I'll be assessing the damage on things like that, probably get some of this body filler out of the carbon so I can assess what's going on in there and over there and go from there. We'll work through it all as we're going. Definitely throw on a mask if you are in a sealed environment like I am and the ventilation's poor. This is gel coat on here. You do want to wear a mask. always a good idea. So I'm gonna throw a mask on, then we're gonna get to work here. Close here, you guys can kind of start to get a feel for what's going on here. I did put that tape down the middle so I could show you guys after. Unfortunately, my battery's almost dead here, but we're gonna do some more time lapse. We're gonna get the rest of these grooves cleaned out. And then in the event my phone dies, what we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna sand this all, and I'm gonna time lapse it for you guys. And then we're gonna come and we're gonna fill all these low spots with Quicksilver epoxy. And down here as well, all the low spots. Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna sand them. And then we're gonna do the whole hood. But we've got ways to go. We're probably an hour into sanding and a third of the way there. So we'll keep going. I did end up caving and taking out the hood pins. The more I looked at the cheesy carbon fiber, the more I hated them. So I did end up taking them out, and as suspected, all but 2 bolts on that one broke. All the rest snapped, just like we thought. All right, we'll keep going here. So if you guys are doing your own hood, a good way to see how things are progressing and how you're doing is to get the hood wet. And essentially when it's wet, it'll be the same as when your gel coat is on top of there. So, I mean, this hood's in really rough shape, but we're gonna do the best we can. And there you can kind of see the carbon starting to come through. Gives you an idea how far we've come. We've got a ways to go yet. So I think rather than bore you guys with hours of sanding, I'll just come back when we get a little bit closer to wrapping it up. You can see we still have this entire side to go, but gives you an idea. I'm not sure that, you know, those gouges are going to be completely gone, but it should be a pretty good improvement, especially from the white hood. So I'm going to keep sanding here. You guys will come back in a few minutes. Maybe it looks better this way. I'm not sure. It's my handprint, but gives you an idea. You can start to see the carbon. Got some repairs to do along here. This is obviously why the hood was painted white. That's where all that body filler was I scraped out. I'm gonna scrape the rest of it out. And then this. So again, rather than bore you guys with hours of sanding, I'll finish this and we'll come back. In the event I get excited tonight, I'm gonna fill these low spots with some epoxy resin, and then it'll cure overnight, and tomorrow we can sand it smooth. All right, guys, we've got our silver tip epoxy here. We're gonna mix this 2-to-1, 2 parts A, 1 part B. We don't need a lot. Well, that's not true. Right now we're filling the little gouges and stuff like that. So we don't need a lot, but we will need later. So we'll mix a little bit. We'll apply it to those holes and the gouges, fill them, let it cure overnight, and then we'll come back. 2 parts to 1, or 2 parts to 1, 2 parts to 1 all the way up. But we're gonna probably be down here, maybe here. We'll see where we end up. Just like that. So like I said, we've got a bunch of these low spots and whatever else. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our epoxy resin and we're just gonna fill them. Just like that. That one's actually got a little strand of carbon in it. Weird, must have come off sanding. And we'll fill all these. Just like that. And now you're better off having a high spot than a low spot. And the reason I say that is we're going to be sanding this hood regardless. So if we have a high spot, we can level it out. Whereas if it's a low spot, you're filling again, right? So this paintbrush is definitely overkill for this. See, just like that. Just like that. Whoop, that's a lot. Probably gonna regret that later. Right? Okay, and then I'll finish this up and we'll come back once it cures a little bit. And then we'll give it a sand and see what we can do with it from there. But kind of gives you an idea. I got to do those big gouges next here. I'm sure you guys don't want to watch that. And then go from there. Well, guys, I'm not sure what happened on that last clip, but that was me putting the 3rd layer of epoxy down. Well, sorry, that was me putting 3 layers of epoxy down. I'm not sure what happened. Things are pretty good. I'm not happy with a few spots. You can see some of the body work. You know what? It is what it is. It was a really rough hood. We'll get it polished up tomorrow. We're gonna let it sit overnight here and cure. And then we'll come and cut it tomorrow and polish it and see how it looks. But overall, I mean, you can see it looks pretty good. It looks wavy in the camera. I think it's just the LED lights. The epoxy itself isn't wavy, but overall, I mean, not bad. You can see a little bit of body work here and there, but for what it was to where it is, I mean, night and day. We'll get it cleaned up tomorrow and see how it looks.